Welcome to the Flight Club Podcast, a woman's guide to leaning out. We give you a behind-the-scenes look at business launch and growth through the stories of successful female entrepreneurs. Here's your host, Felina Hansen, founder and CEO of Hera Hub.
Hello and welcome. I am very, very much looking forward to my conversation today with Laurie Lee Davidson. Back just a few years ago in 2015, Laurie was nearly 60 years of age, and she was propelled by a series of crises into the world of somatic trauma healing. There, she discovered that it's never too late to get well, find peace, make meaning, experience joy, champion justice, and be a force for healing. Filled with gratitude for the people and programs that enabled her to rebirth, Laurie wrote Growing into Gray, Reflections on Transforming Trauma for Women and the World to Offer Hope and Help to Others. The book, which is her first, she has many others in the pipeline, and we're going to talk about those today as well, just came out as we're recording this September 2022. It is equal part life story, social prescription, offering a vision for open-hearted living in complex times. And amen, we have been in complex times. Well, welcome to the show today, Laurie.
Hi, Felina. Thanks for having me. It's great to be here.
Yeah, I am really, really looking forward to sharing your story. We have known each other through a mutual friend, Vivian Sayward, who has been on this podcast several times sharing her story.
Yeah.
And I know one of your favorite swim buddies.
Yes, definitely.
Very much part of your story. So we are going to get to all of that. So before we get into, you deciding to take this very, very deep journey into healing and writing and sharing your story, which so many women have talked about, wanted to do, never took the leap. So I'm excited for you to share what it really meant to you to actually take that leap, what work went into, sharing your story, writing the book, publishing it, getting it out. Kudos to you. Seriously, I think the statistics are like 95% of people who say they're going to write a book, 95% of them never finish it. So you're part of the 5%. So kudos to you for that.
Thank you.
Before we get into, the crux of the book and your journey, I do want to, give folks a little bit of background on you, just business-wise too, career-wise.
Sure.
Just touch on, where are you from? Talk about maybe just touch on some of your education choices, and then we'll take you into your career. And then obviously we'll get into the book and your story as we go through this path.
Right. So I'm from the East Coast originally. I grew up in New England. I went to college there, which is where I know Vivian. We went to Smith. I did a semester at Oxford as well. And then when I got out of school, I was kind of a bit of a lost soul. I didn't know what to do. So I ended up getting a job through some connections in the corporate world. I was doing mortgage and real estate legal assistance for a corporation. It was interesting and I liked it, but I knew it wasn't my be all end all. And I then from there went through a number of different career changes, including I was in the ministry for 6 years. I had my own business previously, making and marketing all natural dog biscuits. I ran a chiropractic office. I did grant writing. So it was kind of, when I look back, it was reflective really of kind of struck trauma energy. I would reach these points in each career, and just not have the capacity really to continue. So I did everything well, but I didn't really ever feel at home in any of it. Now I know why, but I didn't at the time. So my most recent position, what I quote unquote retired from, was the grant writing, which was probably the closest. I think, maybe sneaking up onto right livelihood when I was in that job.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Boy, awesome. Full career. So
yeah, I was a sort of a woman of all trades.
Yeah.
It was a wild variety of things.
That's awesome. And what brought you to the West Coast, Laurie?
Yeah, so I started to do healing. I started to do personal work back when I was in the ministry, and life was starting to get really, really rough for me. And so I turned to therapy, and that kind of jump-started, I would say, a lifelong process. And I kind of needed to make big changes. I needed to put some distance between myself and my family of origin. So my ex-husband, my first husband, and I sold all our possessions, put our dog in our little car, and drove cross country to take up life in New Mexico on a whim.
That's great.
And then I guess about a year and a half later, we moved to Boulder, Colorado. And then that's where he and I broke up. And I was in the midst of my dog biscuit business at that time. And then that's where I met my current husband. And then we were in Oregon for a while, then down here in San Diego. So I was a little bit of a nomad for a while.
Awesome.
Yeah.
So I definitely want to make sure we talk about, because we talk about this a lot, somatic trauma healing. I want to get into what that is. But before we do that, I want to go back in your story. You talk about your family of origin and distancing yourself. I know that's very much part of your story. So if you would share, I mean, let's get right into it. I mean, you have been through a lot, and this book is really about your journey into healing, and hopefully, I would assume, helping other women.
That's
do
right.
Exactly the same. So share with us a bit of that, dare I say, trauma, frankly.
Right.
And then we'll get to the healing part.
Yeah. I mean, all this is, anything I say is coming from the benefit of hindsight now, right? And having come through the healing. So much of this I wouldn't have been able to say to you at the time, but my mother was an alcoholic, and she did drink during pregnancy. So I kind of hit the planet already traumatized, and kind of hypersensitive. So, and then went through some rather difficult experiences in my family of origin. There was some sexual issues. There was, emotional abandonment. There was just, kind of, it all looked really pretty from the outside. We were very good at making things look sweet and happy. But there was a lot of pain. My parents brought a lot of personal pain into the marriage. They both had backgrounds that were extraordinarily traumatic. So amidst all the darkness, there was actually some warmth and love. I mean, I probably wouldn't be here today if it weren't for that. I mean, a big part of my healing has been, yes, dealing with the anger and whatever, that, the grief, really mostly grief about what I did and did not get in my upbringing. But it's also helped humanize my parents and helped me understand them so much more profoundly, and really almost have gratitude, not almost, really have gratitude for them, for what they were able to do given their own massive traumatic background. So, so that's kind of the short version. But I wasn't aware of how that had all impacted literally my physiology.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
We talk about that. I mean, we often talk about mental health and things that have happened to us, but you talk a lot about like energy getting stuck in your body.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And what are some, maybe this gets us into somatic trauma healing. I am not familiar with it. I've heard of it, but I'm looking forward to learning about it. Like, why does it get stuck and how did you get it out?
Yeah, because it's really, I mean, it's great that you're asking this question, Felina, because this is really the crux of it. But there's this nerve that it's a cranial nerve that connects the brain with all your viscera, with your heart, your lungs, your stomach, your intestines. It's called the vagus nerve. And when we're small children, we're infants, even in utero, that nerve is still forming and it's not sheathed yet. It's not myelinated yet. And anything that happens that overwhelms the small child gets registered neurologically. And like there's the fight, flight, freeze response, which I think that's kind of now in the zeitgeist, right? So let's say something overwhelming happened, like me in your utero being flooded with alcohol, right? That triggers the nervous system, says danger. And the choices of the nervous system, and this is all happening in nanoseconds, right, is to either fight it off, flee from it, or freeze. Well, clearly in utero, I can't fight it off and I can't flee. So freeze, right? So the body literally shuts down processes. So that's happening even when we're, little small people. And there's so much coming at us. We're learning so much when we're first born and young, forming children, that there's an awful lot in our cultural way of how we've raised children that actually does set us up for feeling threatened, feeling danger. So we go into survival mode. And that is a physiological process of arrested development, literally, right? It's arrested development and it's frozen energy that doesn't get discharged when it needs to get discharged. Yeah. So it stays in there. It stays in the body. It stays in the cells. It lodges in the tissues. Ida Rolf says your issues are in your tissues. And that is like so true.
It's so interesting because I've heard about this, and I've read about this and like, I think it's still a new concept for a lot of people. The fact that like your system, your cells, like actually like store this. I mean, it's just it's so interesting.
Well, and it is interesting. It's interesting that you said it's new because it really isn't.
Well, no, I know. I think new to the conversation that we're having,
No, but the point I wanted to make, and the reason I keyed in on that is that this understanding has been part of scientific knowledge for, like since the 70s, I think. Okay. And the thing is that in presenting, and the science is overwhelming. I mean, I could just flood you, right? But it's so threatening, literally, to the established medical system.
Yes.
That
let me just give you a pill and it'll fix it, right? Like just take this thing and you will feel better.
Yeah, exactly. So it has not been easy, for people to kind of put aside their training and whatnot and kind of embrace this. But it's really taking off now. I think more and more of us are speaking about it and learning about it. And, I think I see changes in the medical system, which is great. I'm very heartened by that.
Absolutely. Yeah. So maybe we just went through a period of, big pharma trying to take over and making us, forget about these things, and people are finally waking up.
Yeah. I mean, I literally, as you probably know from the book, I was medicalized for 25 years. I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. First, it was diagnosed as depression, and then the diagnosis was changed later on to bipolar disorder. And I came to learn that it was not a disorder. It was not anything wrong with my brain. It was that there was this survival energy that was stuck in my body and was driving these wild behavioral and mood swings. And you can literally, that's the brilliance of neuroplasticity. You can literally go in there and rewire your brain through some of these somatic techniques. And I am here to say that it's life-changing. Yeah. Absolutely life-changing. Yeah.
That's amazing to hear. And I'm sure a lot of people who, you know, have been through some of the, you know, some similar experiences in life.
Yeah.
So I want to get into, you know, as folks look at your book, I mean, you have this beautiful picture of you on the beach. Yeah, obviously we'll get into the title of the book and how you came to that. But I want to talk, you know, I want to go back to age 3 when you jumped in your neighbor's pool and never got out. No, I'm just kidding.
Right, yeah.
How important has, you know, physical activity and specifically, you know, water and everything that brings been a part of your healing journey? Talk about that a bit.
Oh, it's been hugely important, Felina. You know, that's one of the things that I really wonder about, because thankfully for me, I probably would not be here today. I would have gone through with my 2 suicide attempts that were unsuccessful. I probably would have gone through with them if it weren't for the fact that physical activity was a big part of my life straight through. Like, we know so much now about how movement is so important to the human animal, the well-being of the human animal. So I can't imagine what my life would have looked like without that. So swimming was super important. That was like my main physical activity. I swam competitively, still am, actually, more for fun, but you know, I still do races and stuff at my age. But the physical activity is huge. Then add in the water element. I don't know if you've read the book Blue Mind.
I've heard of it.
Yeah,
because of Vivian.
It's this amazing scientific investigation into why humans are drawn to water and what it actually does to us and for us physiologically. So I know I've benefited all along from that as well. It's pretty profound. It's pretty profound.
Awesome. Yeah. So I want to talk about, you've got a couple dates noted, 2015, 2017. You know, in getting into this journey, what was the trigger to get into somatic healing?
Yeah, like pretty much being taken down to my knees. I mean, I had an accident. I had an accident in the swimming pool, gave myself a concussion, didn't treat it properly, and developed post-concussion syndrome. So I was literally taken out of life. I couldn't think. I was constantly nauseous. I had migraines. I was dizzy. And then shortly thereafter, my husband, who was on a bicycle, was hit by a truck and nearly died twice. And while those 2 things were going on, my in-laws started to fail. My dog was dying, and a neighbor started showing up naked. So, I mean, it was like this constellation of things that completely overwhelmed my system. And I got really quite ill. I developed thrush, which typically only infants and the very old get because their immune systems are so tanked. Yeah. So it was a pretty stunning moment. And I was looking at myself in the mirror, looking at the mess in my mouth and feeling just the mess of my entire body, and realized, oh my God, I am taking all this stress out on myself. On my body. So I knew something had to change. And I still didn't know about somatic healing yet, but I did know about mindfulness.
Mhm.
And so that's kind of, I followed that thread and began to learn about mindfulness and took a few courses. And then that just started the whole thing, because mindfulness actually starts with getting in touch with your body. So, and then everything just kind of opened from there. It became this path that was revealed to me as I went along. So, yeah. It was very surprising when I went into mindfulness. I was not thinking of my body, but that's exactly where it took me. Yeah. Yeah.
Wow. And what a journey from there.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
I do want to touch on this just briefly. Somebody is new to this concept of somatic healing. Like, what's the simplest way to describe it and start engaging in this practice?
Yeah. Oh, and there's so many wonderful ways now. It's really about learning about your nervous system and how to inhabit your body, get present with your actual physical self, which sounds so simple, but for those of us raised in this culture that kind of assumes we operate from the neck up, right? It's all very intellect oriented, kind of even discounts the body. It can be, and those of us who have experienced trauma, of large degrees or even small degrees, we tend to dissociate from our bodies. So it's really the very basic thing is coming back to the body and learning how to notice your own patterns of when fight, flight, freeze gets activated, how to get in touch with the other side, which is the tend and befriend, or the rest and digest, because those are, the important parts on the other side of the nervous system that we need to cultivate. So it's really getting down deeply personal with your physical being. And there are many ways of doing that. There's somatic experiencing. There's people like Irene Lyon, who's out there doing really critical work in helping people expand capacity in their nervous system. There's just so many. And I have a whole lot of resources on my website that talk about that as well. And in the back of the book, there's a huge section on resources. If you're curious, just Google vagus nerve or polyvagal theory or nervous system healing.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome that you include examples in your book and on your website as well.
Yeah, because there are lots of different ways. I tried to be clear in my book that this is my journey and this is the way it kind of played out for me. And there are other ways of doing it. I would say the only one thing that I can stand in and say has to be done is it's got to be body oriented. Because, Felina, I went to therapy 12 times in my life and got a little bit of, some help each time. I worked with some really good people whose intentions were beautiful and it was helpful. But I never got healing until I got into the body. Yeah. That's what made the difference. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So I want to get into the book a little bit more.
Okay.
So you started to write. Obviously you had been, you had some experience writing. You are a beautiful writer. So thank you for sharing your gifts with us.
Oh, thank you.
So you started to write some blogs, basically, or just your thoughts. You realized there might be more there, and talk about that experience through what we all have collectively been through now, COVID. 2 years, 2.5 years, whatever you want to say. How did that shape your writing and the whole process?
Oh, it shaped it greatly, because I call myself an accidental author because I didn't start out writing a book. That was not my intent. And the only reason this thing exists really is because of COVID. I was all set. One of the modalities that I used for my healing is something that's a conscious dance practice called 5 Rhythms. And I was all set up to become a teacher. Had training modules scheduled, and I was ready to fly all over the world to get this done. COVID hit, and that went away. Yeah. The teacher training track was shut down temporarily, and like, it was like, well, there goes my life, there goes my next chapter.
Yeah.
Now what? So so many terrible, horrible, horrendous things have happened because of COVID, but there was this little tiny silver lining for me, which was time and space. And it was, so what do I want to do? Ooh, I think I'll write, because people have been asking me, tell your story, maybe blog about your story. So yeah, without COVID, I don't think this book would exist, Valina. I really don't.
Yeah.
And it gave me the space and time in this odd way, to get this done. And I opened myself to the experience, and I honestly feel like I was this channel, like it was coming through me. It didn't feel hard. I would sit down every day and open my heart, and this just would, it just came out.
Poured out. Yeah.
Yeah.
I like what you say on your website. I'm with the Buddhists on this one. If we resist change, we increase our suffering. I think that's because in resisting the only true constant, we're efforting against nature, life, and our very selves.
Yeah. I say that from experience, because I spent a lot of my life efforting against myself.
For 5 decades, as you say.
Yeah, because change really is the only constant, Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. So let's talk about the title of your book. How
Sure.
did that come about?
Yeah. So after I had started meditating regularly, which was kind of the kickstart to all this, things used to just kind of download when I would be in the midst of meditation. And one day the words ample waves of gray just came through. And so, I've had gray hair since my late 20s. I'm just one of those people who has that genetic predisposition. And it's a part of my identity, and my hair is wavy. So I was like, okay, well, that's kind of funny, whatever. And then I began to look at that phrase in a broader sense as I was learning kind of about the nervous system and the sine wave of a healthy nervous system, and looking around at how life goes in waves, and people go in waves, and nature goes in waves. And then it kind of got into one of the legacies of trauma is black and white thinking. And I was starting to lose that, which is a blessing. I was starting to see life in shades of gray. Wow, things aren't so black and white anymore, So it was all just kind of this organic thing. And I actually called the book Ample Waves of Gray first, and my developmental editor was, I'm not getting it. I don't get it. I don't like this. Go back to the drawing board, So it was a process of, oh yeah, this has been about post-traumatic growth. Mm-hmm. This is about growing into the gray. And there it was. So yeah, in the gray of my hair, the gray of the world, the gray of thinking, yeah, the whole 9 yards. So
I love it. It is absolutely perfect. And you've got other books in you. So
I do.
Growing up in flames, growing down to earth. You've got your whole series lined out.
Yeah. And well, I'm going to depend on people to keep me accountable. One of them's the flames one is partially written. Okay. It's partially written, and the other one is just all in my head. So, but yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love the fact that you already have this mapped out. I know, I mean, I'm going through the process myself of writing a book, and people will ask,
Yes,
what's your next book? I'm like, are you kidding? I'm not writing another book. That's so much work. But
yeah, I hear you. Well, plus you're running an entire company, and I mean, yeah, which are things that's something I'm not doing, Felina. So
well, I love the theme and I love the series, and I really appreciate you, Laurie, putting yourself out there like this. I mean, as I know the intention is to really, share your story so others will be able to share their story as well, and learn from you, of course, and learn from your experiences, and making the impact is so incredibly important. But I do know that you're excited to give other people, an opportunity to share their voice as well.
That's the whole point. I think there's real healing power in storytelling for us all, in hearing the stories and telling the stories. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah. We all have a story.
We do. We absolutely
well, thank you for being brave enough to tell yours. And
you're welcome.
Laurie, if I know you've got lots of things coming up in your book launch over the next upcoming months. If folks want to tap into obviously buying the book, but also just, getting to know you more and seeing what upcoming things that you're doing, is the best place your website, laurieleedavidson.com?
Yes, I would say so. Yep. And they can also find me on LinkedIn. That's my one and only social media platform.
I know we've talked about this. That's
yes,
good choice. Good choice. Yeah. And if you're listening, just audio in your car, Laurie is spelled Laurie, laurieleedavidson.com. So pick up Laurie's new book, Growing into Gray. It is beautiful. And I'm so proud of you and so excited for you, Laurie.
Thank you so much, Felina, and thanks for having me here today.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining this week's episode of Flight Club, sponsored by Hera Hub. We look forward to sharing more success stories with you soon.